Should we go back to it? Because we've got a lot to talk about in terms of what's happening with Andy Burnham and the Prime Minister. It's funny how this is still dominating the headlines. Earlier this afternoon, the PM announced that £60 million offered by the government to Greater Manchester to go into Tier 3 will be distributed to the region's boroughs after a bitter row developed. Of course, the Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, said local politicians had originally wanted £90 million. That equates for £15 million a month until the end of the financial year, to protect the incomes of people affected by business closures. He said civic leaders were prepared to reduce their demand for financial support to £65 million, the bare minimum to prevent a winter of hardship, he said. But the government stuck to that offer of £60 million. So who's right here? Boris or Burnham? Jonathan Davis is an economist and the presenter of the Booms and Busts podcast. Jonathan, are you picking a side on this one? Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. I am picking a side, and the side I'm picking is they're both wrong. There shouldn't be any lockdown whatsoever. I'm going to say it. I don't know who else has been saying it. As far as I'm concerned, it's the biggest fraud in history. It's about time the people of Britain rose up and spoke about this as clearly as possible. The statistics do not affirm what they're saying. They're adding pneumonia and flu statistics to the number of COVID deaths now.
Are they?
Because they know that the number of COVID deaths are tiny.
Are they really adding the number of flu and
yes.
What was it? Are you sure about that? I mean, I know they're releasing them at the same time, but I don't think they're adding them together, are they?
Yes, they are.
I have to pick you up on that, Jonathan. I'm not sure you're right.
Well, by all means, Ian, but the number of COVID deaths in the United Kingdom is about 1,600. That's just about 5 a day out of 68 million.
And what period are you talking about here?
From the beginning of the year, sorry.
So 1,600. So what about the 3,000?
Exactly. That's taken from official government statistics, and I'll send you the details.
It's okay. Well, it'd be interesting to see that. So I assume you're talking about people who died of COVID as distinct to dying with COVID.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just park that for 1 second. Let's look at the money here, though, because that Rishi money tree, it seems, Jonathan, has been bought out the cupboard again.
£250 billion, £8,500 per taxpayer, borrowed / printed money, of course. It doesn't come from taxation because we don't have as much tax as we need to cover the cost of the things that the government does. So, of course, it's borrowed, printed. So it's 23 million or 60 million going into Greater Manchester and the rest of the boroughs. And I notice as well that Sheffield's getting 41 million. That's £22 a person. What I'd like to know is what Andy Burnham and the local mayors of the boroughs, what they're going to do with this money, because apparently it's to help the people of Manchester and Bolton and Burnley and etc. Well, what are the politicians actually going to do with that money as opposed to take on more, diversity officers at £80,000 a year plus big final salary pension?
Well, in terms of where it goes, I mean, you're right to raise that. I mean, this is the kind of detail. A lot of our listeners this afternoon are saying, it would have been nice to have a bit more of a breakdown. What perhaps worries people just as much on this, Jonathan, is the fact that we haven't even started this journey yet. South Yorkshire, Leeds, Birmingham, these are all areas that at some point may find themselves in exactly the same position and will be requiring money as well. So this is just the start of another spending spree. South Yorkshire might get 41 million quid. Birmingham might get 71 million quid. London might get 121 million quid. They might get nothing.
It's remarkable. Up until about, I was saying this to a client just this morning, up until the first week of April, perhaps the second week, I can't remember exactly, I was wondering about all of this. I thought maybe there must be something in it. But since then, and I've actually watched interviews, presentations, I've read analysis, I've read reports, I've listened to broadcasts and podcasts from people who are serious players here, scientists, medical professionals, and politicians. It is abundantly clear to me that there's something incredibly sinister here, and it is not about a virus, because COVID-19, coronavirus 2019, COVID, coronavirus disease 2019, is just another coronavirus. We had H1N1 in 2009, we had SARS, I think it was 2004 or something like that, and we've had them for the last 20 odd years. How come this one, which has no more effect on the health of the population than any of the other coronaviruses, how come they're doing this to us?
On that point,
very sinister.
Okay, Jonathan, thank you. Jonathan Davis, economist, presenter of the Booms and Busts podcast.